things turn on, I should have done. Is it on?
You are now.
Thank you. Anyway, I used to watch hunting videos regularly, and sometimes they'd break away from a hunt to talk about a various tip. This one tip, this one ballistics expert looks at a common myth that if you sight in for one kind of bullet and then switch to one that's just a little tiny bit different in the hunting scenario, that it's no big deal. I mean, surely the difference in performance can't be that much if it's 180 grain bullet versus 150 grain bullet, or maybe they're the same grain weight, but they're just a little different style. So this guy investigates that. He sights in his rifle for this one particular type of bullet, and I think his shot was about 40 or 50 yards distance. He sights in so that it's just perfect for that bullet. And then he switches to a different style of bullet. I believe the grain weight was the same, but the style was different. And that bullet hits about 3 or 4 inches high into the right of where he's aiming at. No big deal, right? At least at that distance, about 40 or 50 yards. He makes the point that this is a trajectory here. If this shot's about 100 yards away, 200 yards away, 300 yards away, 400 yards away, that disparity is going to increase and you're going to completely miss the deer. And so he makes the point that when you sight it, make sure you use the exact same ammo that you plan to hunt with as a result. Don't even let the tiniest little detail make you think, yeah, no big deal. Because as you saw there, it could be. Well, we actually see an example of this in the Bible with people. We're going to look at two people who look virtually identical, at least at their start. Just have a little tiny difference. So as I mentioned, it's 1 Kings chapter 3. I'm going to start with verse 16 here. Verse 16. Then 2 women who were harlots came to the king and stood before him. The one said, "O my lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth to a child while she was in the house. It happened on the 3rd day, after I gave birth, that this woman also gave birth to a child. And we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, only the 2 of us in the house. The woman's son died in the night, because she lay on it. So she arose in the middle of the night, and took my son from beside me while your maidservant slept, and laid him at her bosom, and laid her dead son at my bosom. When I rose in the morning to nurse my son, behold, he was dead. But when I looked at him more carefully in the morning, behold, he was not my son, whom I had born." Then the other woman said, "No, for the living one is my son, and the dead one is your son." But the first woman said, "No, for the dead one is your son, and the living one is my son." Thus they spoke before the king. Then the king said, "The one says, 'This is my son who is living, and your son is the dead one.' And the other says, 'No, for your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one.' The king said, 'Get me a sword.' So they brought a sword before the king. The king said, 'Divide the living child in 2, and give half to one and half to the other.' Then the woman whose child was the living one spoke to the king, for she was deeply stirred over her son, and said, 'O my lord, give her the living child, and by no means kill him.' But the other said, 'He shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide him.' Then the king said, 'Give the first woman the living child, and by no means kill him. She is the mother.' When all Israel heard of the judgment which the king handed down, they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to administer justice." Now, normally when we hear that story, we think about how wise Solomon was with the wisdom he was given by God. And this story has become a proverb of how to figure out who a liar is in a scenario based on, that's mine, no, that's mine. But what we don't think too much about is the difference between these 2 women. Both these women look the same at their start. Both of them are prostitutes. They are probably not sex slaves because they get to go directly to the king. A slave couldn't just do that. They probably chose a profession. We don't know their life stories. We don't know how different it was. We know that these women are both morally compromised with the same flaw. We don't know exactly how they got there, but so far they each look the same, right? These look like 2 bullets that are the same. Both these women are in the same environment. It says they're both living in the same house. Probably partners in business. Probably they got to become friends. working with each other as co-workers. So they still look the same, right? They're both heading down the same path. Both prostitutes. Both willing to sell themselves to make a buck while taking away somebody else's virtue as well as their own. They're both heading down the exact same path to ruin. They're both heading down the exact same path of selfishness. So far, two bullets, look the same, heading down the same destination, exactly to the same bullseye. But then something happens. I'm going to take two shooters, both highly skilled to the same level. Give them the exact same kind of rifle, exact same kind of bullet, exact same scope setting, exact same targets at a distance, exact same distance. What's the probability that both these guys could hit their mark? It's kind of high. They're skilled shooters, at least to within an inch. Except for one problem. On the way to the target, there's a bush. I'm going to tell these guys that they have to shoot through that bush to get to their target. Now what's the probability that they're both going to hit the same mark? It goes down dramatically. It's entirely possible one guy hits a twig and his bullet gets deflected, and the other guy goes straight through. Maybe both guys hit a twig, just in a different place, at a slightly different angle, and it gets deflected a little differently. The odds of them both hitting the exact same mark now ain't happening. These women are both traveling down the same path, same, at least as it looks. Then they hit an obstacle. And there's a turning point that deflects them, and both a little differently. Every human being is different, just like every bullet type is different. We're not all going to fly perfectly the same at the start. And we all hit obstacles on the way that want to guide us one way or another and deflect us away from what we initially thought. But the angle of your shot is affected by your heart. Each of these women had a little difference in their heart. And it was exposed when they came to this turning point, this bush that they hit. Both these women got pregnant as a result of what they did. Both these women had a baby within 3 days of each other. What do? They're living as a prostitute, now they got a baby, so what do? I heard a study a while back. Said that 90% of people who come to Christ do it under the age of 20, and the other 10% have to go through a crisis scenario before they wake up and realize, I need to give my life to God, I need help. There was a woman who attended this church a while back. She did not grow up in a Christian family, but one of the things that drove her to accepting Christ was she had her first baby. You hold a baby, you realize, wow, got a big responsibility here. Maybe I should be the best example I could be. Maybe I need some help from a higher power. And that often drives people to Christ. And we see that with one of these women. One woman lays on her baby and kills it, and the other one doesn't. What's the difference there? One woman took the path of least resistance and convenience. Kept her baby by her side so she could nurse it while she's asleep. The baby doesn't whine and wake her up. She doesn't have to get up. It's right there. The only problem is there's that risk of rolling on it and crushing it. The other woman took a little extra care to put her baby probably in a crib. So that means the baby's going to cry the night when it's hungry. That means she loses her sleep. We're going to call her Woman A. Woman A sacrifices her sleep and her comfort for what's best for her baby. Woman B sacrifices what's best for her baby for her personal comfort. At the start, that looks like just a small difference with just one baby. These women aren't that different, are they? Well, but something happens after that. I watched an advertisement with Domino's. I believe it was a financial ad. I can't remember which company. The illustration they gave, they have Domino's starting off with a little standard size, and they knock it over into a bigger domino. And there was just enough momentum from that domino to knock the bigger one over and add even more momentum so that it kept going to the next biggest, and then the next biggest, until about 10 or 15 dominoes in, they knocked over one that was taller than this building and wider than my arm span, starting with this little guy right here. It's called incremental momentum. That's the way your life choices work. The little choice you make today has consequences that can have a domino effect on other future choices you make that get bigger and bigger and bigger until there's a drastic difference. Woman A is a little self-sacrificing. Woman B is a little bit selfish. The result? Woman A's baby is still alive. Woman B kills her baby. But it doesn't stop there. Woman B gets even more selfish. Can't stand the idea that she was an irresponsible mother, no longer has her baby, and she's working alongside her partner, whose baby is still alive because she was a good, careful mom. So guess what she does? Steals a baby. So now the difference has gotten even bigger. So, two women just a little bit different in the way they treat their baby. One baby lives, the other one dies. Now there's a little bigger difference. The irresponsible mom, woman B, becomes a thief, potentially a murderer when you kill someone else's baby. Woman A now goes from, I'm willing to sacrifice sleep to, I got to fight to get my baby back. So they go to a king, King Solomon. And then you see a larger difference come. They're arguing about which one owns the baby. One of these women is obviously lying because they can't both be telling the truth here because they're contradicting each other. So now the king says, I'm going to have a little solution to this problem. I'm going to hack this baby in half, give it to each of you. Problem solved. He could have taken a path of lesser resistance. He could have just said, wait, but you're both prostitutes? You don't have husbands. Your baby's not going to have a dad. Tell you what, I'm going to take this baby away from both of you and give him to someone else who is a good royal family. But Solomon doesn't do that. That's not wisdom, and that's not justice. One of these women had her baby stolen from her despite being a good mother and did not deserve to lose her baby. The other woman is a liar, a thief, and a murderer, even to the king. A liar to the king. So Solomon had to get to the root of the problem here. What would cause somebody to lie and steal somebody's baby? A spirit of malice. So Solomon, with God's wisdom, says, if you want to find the true mother, you've got to expose these women's hearts. You've got to expose which one has malice. So he says, I'm going to chop this baby in half and give half to each of you, and hopefully that will settle things. Woman A loves her baby and says, no, let this other woman have it. I'm willing to sacrifice having a relationship with my own flesh and blood if that's what it takes for this baby to live. Go ahead, let her have it. Woman B says, it'll be neither mine nor yours. The scales will be balanced. I won't have to live with watching you be a good mom and reminding myself that I was irresponsible. They started out just a little bit different. One's a little more selfish than the other. And they change more, then more, then more, until the difference in selflessness to selfishness is so plain that the king has to put forward a ridiculous scenario that the one with malice falls for. And the one who was willing to sacrifice got her son back. Woman A takes precautions. She sacrifices. You see the trajectory of her life going this way. The Bible doesn't tell us what happens after this to these two women, but we could probably project some things, couldn't we? If you're woman A, the king gives you your baby back, do you think you're going to keep living in that same house with woman B? After she's already proven she's willing to steal your baby and is a bad mother? Probably not. So she can't live in that house anymore. Can't live in that environment anymore. Now what does she do? Maybe she gets a new job. Maybe she gets right with God. I read this last verse for a reason. It says, people heard this story and admired the wisdom of Solomon. Do you think that's all they heard? They may not have known the names of these women, but they heard this story. That first woman, based on her trajectory, was on a path to redemption, to being a good mom, possibly getting her life turned around. Woman B, I guarantee you, was ruined, at least back home. The only people at home heard Solomon was able to figure out who the child's rightful mother was by woman B showing her malice. You think any guy in his right mind wants to marry her? You think anybody wants to trust her with anything? And it all started with a little difference in the way they treated their baby. And each incremental choice progressed so that they became radically different. Just like the difference in performance of two bullets of two different types being fired from the same gun. Heard a study done a while back. A teacher is a class full of second graders. He says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give each one of you a piece of candy. If you want to eat it now, you can. But here's what else I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the room and come back in 15 minutes. And if after 15 minutes you still have your candy, you've disciplined enough to not eat it, I'll give you a second piece of candy. But if you can't wait that long, you're just going to get that one piece of candy. Teacher gives all the kids his candy. Leaves the room, comes back in 15 minutes. Now I don't remember the percentage, but I'm pretty sure it was the majority of these kids couldn't wait. They had to eat their candy now. But a few of them did have the discipline to wait the 15 minutes, and they got their second piece of candy. They followed these kids later in life into adulthood. The kids who had the discipline to wait 15 minutes for their second piece of candy became the most successful in their jobs and in their lives. The choices they made while they were young, the discipline they developed while they were young in a small thing like a piece of candy, set their lives on a trajectory that radically separated them from their classmates. I got one piece of good news for you. There's a difference between you and a bullet. A bullet's inanimate. A bullet doesn't have its own power when it leaves the gun. You do have some choices. You have God's help. If you've taken a wrong turn with a deflection, you can get back in the right direction. There may still be consequences, but God can and will help you get your life turned around. But if you just float along like everything's okay because of one bad choice, and you let it continue as a pattern, it's going to progressively change for better or for worse. So my question for you is, what kind of choices are you making? Are you neglecting the little choices? Yeah, it's a little selfish to do this, but it's just a small thing. Yeah, I know it's a small thing, but it's nice, so I'll do this thing to help somebody here. You never know what domino you're going to hit, but it's going to keep growing incrementally. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for your word. Thank you for giving Solomon the wisdom to administer justice in this scenario. Thank you for the example and for getting truth exposed and justice delivered. I ask that you would give us all wisdom to identify our life choices and what needs to change, whether or not we're doing the right thing, even in the small things. That we would travel down the path you want us to go. I ask you would seal this message on our hearts. Keep everybody safe as they drive home today. Bless everyone who can. Lord, I ask that your blessing of peace would be on their house when they are home. And let your face shine upon them. Help them to become the people you want them to become. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Peace.